Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the audible edition of Daf Yomi.
I see the green.
That's right.
You're illuminated.
Light is green. The
Yeah,
trap
we
is
hear
clean. And we are Ches Amud Aleph, 19 lines down. Tonight, we are mentioning our sponsor from last night. Sponsored by Kahal Yereim, wings and beer. It was delicious. Probably looked delicious on the video, but you couldn't hear us chewing. So I apologize for that. But the wings and beer sponsored in honor of the birth of a baby girl to Dan and Gabi Lerman. Mazel tov to them and mazel tov to the entire kihila. We are Gufa. We had talked about the Minchas Chavitin. Now, if you have a chance and you want to do some studying, it's a good idea to grab the back of this. If you have the edition that's printed in 2015 or later of this art scroll here, these pictures are really, really great, and we've mentioned them in the past and things. But if you have them and you want to be able to follow along, right? This Minchas Chavitin is on page. All of them are listed here. Minchas, the Mincha offerings, and this is the Mincha of the Chavite Kohen Gadol on 1391 down over here. Okay, and what it says that happens is, right, this Chavite Kohen Gadol and the Minchas Chinuch, which is the induction offering when the Kohen brings it the first time. So you're going to take 1 Yisrael of flour, 3 lugam of oil, and 1 kometz, 3 fingers full of frankincense. Right, the Isaron flour is then divided into 2 sacred vessels, each one a half of an Isaron, as we've discussed.
What page?
Right, page
what page in this?
1391. Then each half Isaron is then divided into 6 parts. Right, so you get them into little smaller utensils, and then the 3 lugs of oil are divided into 12 revius, right? Because a revius is a quarter of a lug, so you can divide each of them into little revius cups. Okay, then each of these is now made into scalded loaves. Scalded loaves are described back on page 1387. Is the description of how they made the scalded loaves, in which they take some of the oil is mixed into the flour, the dough is scalded with boiling water, then the dough is divided into loaves and then baked in an oven, right? And then the loaves are fried in the remaining oil. That's how they made scalded loaves.
Is that what he showed us in the cartoon?
He showed us mixing it, but he didn't show us which ones are scalded or baked or pan fried or of those kinds of things. Okay. Then, right, each bread comes out sort of a flat shape because it was baked on a pan. And what you do is you fold it. Each bread is folded into 4 without breaking it. It's folded into like a pizza kind of a thing. So you fold it into 4, and then the frankincense is added, and then the meal offering is brought to the altar on the southwest, touched to the southwest corner. And then the offering is salted, and the entire thing is burned on the Mizbeach. Nobody eats anything from the Kohen Gadol's offering. Remember that we also had a rule that we had learned that the mincha of any Kohen, if any Kohen brings a korban mincha, nothing gets eaten, right? The Kohen only consumes the remnants of a mincha offering brought by somebody who's a non-Kohen. Okay, so that's some of the rules. I'll refer back to these pages as we go through each of the korbanos as they come up, but it's good to be able to see because actually we go through the process. The way that they outline it is kind of nice. They outline, just to be able to show you on 1384, this is the flour, the oil, wine. This is how it's brought. This page 1384 is how it's done when the mincha accompanies animals. Right? So the oil is poured in, it's mixed together, some of the oil is mixed in the dough, the remaining oil is poured on top, it's salted and burned on the altar. Then we've got the mincha, the korban mincha, for a nedava, for a donated offering. And this is the sort of the start, preparation step 1, 2, 3, and then what they do is they just say 1, 2, 3, do the same 3 steps, and then do step 4, step 5, or step 4, step 5. And then this is 6, 7 steps. So therefore you can just follow along and see how each of them, same 3 steps. This is 4, 5, 6, 7 for a baked loaves. This is how they do it by the rakikin, by these wafers that are baked in the oven. What's the difference? Scalded loaves. So you can see all of the different types of how they made each one, which is the ovens, which are pan fried, which is where when they mix the oil, and the service that was done, right? And then when you have this. When you have your offering, right, you take the frankincense, you place the flour to one side, you bring the whole offering, touch it to the corner, you push the levona to one side, take a kmitza, right? You're not supposed to get any of the frankincense into your kmitza because otherwise it's a chaser. They have a nice picture of a kmitza, which is mole and chaser, on here on page 1387, these are some of the things that we've discussed, right? This is filling the three fingers properly. This is a deficient one, although I would have preferred if they had put the picture like this, because that's really a better description of like this rather than down here, but it's not filled all the way to capacity. And then we said the overbrimming is where it's sticking out the fingers. So those are the ideas, those are the things that we've discussed. We're talking about the Minchas Chavitin on page 1391 as we go through. So remember that that is what we are discussing in the Minchas Chavitin. Okay, and then the Korban Homer, which we discussed the other day, is on page 1393. The Lechem Apanim we discussed, which we discussed yesterday. Page 1394 is the stacks, as we said, with the bazichin. And then this bazichin, the frankincense, was then put into a utensil and burned on the Mizbeach. This is how they made the Lechem Apanim. They had taken 24 yisarons of flour and 2 kmitzas of the frankincense, and then they would mix it together. The dough is divided into 12 loaves. Each of the loaves is 10 tfachim by 5 tfachim. 10 tfachim, that's pretty big loaf, right? So it's, right, 1.5 amos or so.
Bring it into your clothes, you buy it
Thick,
home.
right? It's a loaf, and then you fold, and then you would fold it up so that it would be 6 wide, and then it would be 2 handbreadths tall, and then you put little corners, little horns on it, and put it into a mold, and that was how they made the lechem hapanim. So we discussed that they really weren't like how tall they were, because somebody was holding 6 of them.
Yeah.
Each one of them was 2 handbreadths tall. So that means if they were holding 6 of them, you're 12 handbreadths, 2 amos tall. So you're holding up a stack like this. It's okay, it's manageable, right? Each person.
2 hands or with the right hand?
It seems like they're carrying it in. It doesn't seem to indicate whether you have to do the carrying with 1 hand. However, we've talked about everything being done with the right hand, so it would probably seem. But we do know that conveying
You better be right about that.
conveying limbs to the mizbeach, we know that you could do with both your right hand and your left hand. So, okay. So now let's talk about this minchas chavitin. That's my introduction to the minchas chavitin. The chavite kohen gadol, the kohen gadol's chavitin. Rabbi Yochanan Omer, ena kedusha lechatzoyin. You can't sanctify half of it. We discussed that what you have to do when you bring this minchas chavitin is you're going to take the flour and you're going to divide it into 2 utensils. What if you only brought 1 utensil in the first place? And then you come back in the afternoon and bring the other half a utensil. Is that? Rabbi Yochanan says it does not work. And Rabbi Elazar says, mitoch shekreva lechatzoin kedusha lechatzoin. Since you're going to sacrifice it half at a time, you can bring it half at a time. That's okay. Amar Rav Acha. Rav Acha says, my time with Rabbi Yochanan. Why does Rabbi Yochanan feel that you have to bring the entire thing and then divide it in half? Because Amar Kra, the pasuk says, by Yikra Perik Vav pasuk Gimel Asiri Saifa Solas, you take 1/10 of an eighth of solas. Mincha machatzisa. You take this a mincha tamid machatzisa baboker machatzisa ba'erev. The pasuk full read is. We just read the pasuk here in the Gemara. Just quotes machatzisa. Half of it in the morning and half of it at night. So it means that hevi mincha ve'achar kach chotzehu. That means you have to first bring the whole mincha and then take half of it. That's how Rabbi Yochanan learns. You've got to bring the whole thing and then grab half of it. Okay, Rabbi Elazar seems to say no, because you're going to divide it in half anyway. What difference does it make? You just bring half now, half later. Meisvei. So we have a question from a Mishnah that we're going to learn later on. You're not allowed to bring the minchas chavitin of the Kohen Gadol halfway. You've got to bring the full isaron, and then you've got to divide that in half. Vetanya, and we learn in a brisa, ilu nemar mincha machatzis. If it had said, another brisa tells me the same thing. If it had said a mincha which is halved, hayisi omer mevi chatzi isaron mi beso shachar sumakriv, chatzi isaron mi beso arve sumakriv. Bring half an isaron in the morning, bring half an isaron in the afternoon, and that would be what you do. Talmud lomer machatzisa baboker. Take half of it in the morning. Mechza misholim humevi. You've got to take the whole thing and bring half of it. So you've got a Mishnah and a Brisa that seem to make it clear that what Rabbi Yochanan is saying is correct. So the answer is, how does Rabbi Elazar learn this? Lemitzvah. Rabbi Elazar says that's the best way to do it. Best practice is to have the whole thing. But you don't have to. You could bring half. Amalei Rav Geviha mi Beik Seal l'Rav Ashi. So Rav Geviha, who is from a place called Beik Seal, he said to Rav Ashi, "V'ha chuka ksiv ba." How can you say it's only a mitzvah? We have a rule. Whenever the word chuka is written, right? We had this by the Paraduma. We had this by the Avoda of Yom Kippur. When the word chok is written, it means it's required. And when it's talking about the minchas chavitin, it says, "V'hakohen hamashiach tachtam mibanav yaseh osa chok olam." A kohen who is anointed from the from the Kohanim, right? This is a chok that he has to bring forever. It's a chok. That means it is required. So Amar Lei, so Rav Ashi explained to him, Lo nitzrecha el lahavia sholim mi beso. The answer is, you're right. He has to bring all of it from home. However, he doesn't have to sanctify all of it at once. He can't go home later and get more and then come back. He's got to bring the whole thing. But then he can sanctify half of it in the morning and then sanctify the other half in the afternoon. He doesn't have to put it all into one utensil first and then divide it in half. Now,
Does Rabbi Elazar need a source for?
that's a great question,
How you know that it's
right? We brought a source for Rabbi Yochanan, right? And it sounds like he's just saying, the pasuk just bring half, right? Bring half of the offering, but like the whole offering is both parts, that one's in the morning, one's in the afternoon. He just doesn't say that the pasuk proves Rabbi Yochanan's point. It's like,
source would be that the pasuk
doesn't clearly say it. Exactly, yeah. Now, Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi, does Rabbi Yochanan says that you can't bring it halfway? V'ha itmar, have we not already learned? Hifrish chatzi yisaron v'daso lehosif. Let's say a person brings half an isaron of in a utensil, right? And he's going to sanctify this as a korban, and he has in mind that he's going to add more, right? He's just scooping up flour, put it in the utensil. Okay, but he hasn't brought all of it in yet because he's still scooping in, he's pouring. So Rav Amar Eino Kadosh, Rav says it's not sanctified yet. Until you get the entire measure that you need, it's not sanctified. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kadosh, Rabbi Yochanan says it is. Now, why should it be? If he's taking a spoonful of flour and he's putting in spoonfuls of flour, then why is it that the flour that's in the bowl, which is less than the entire korban, why is that sanctified? According to Rabbi Yochanan, it's not sanctified till you get the whole thing. V'misa leilif mi chavitin. If what you're saying is true, that he requires the entire sacrifice, then he should learn from chavitin that you can't sanctify part of a mincha offering without having the entire thing present. So the vichitema, maybe you'll say Rabbi Yochanan milsa mi milsa lo yalif. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan doesn't agree with some of the things we were discussing yesterday. Can I take what I learned from one mincha offering and apply it to a different mincha offering? I get it. By minchas chavitin, I need to have the whole offering. Who's to say that rule applies to all other korban minchas as well? Well, the Hamar Rabbi Yochanan says, Shlomim sheshachtan behechal ksherin. If I slaughter a shlomim in the Beis HaMikdash, it's kosher. That's a separate. We learned that in Maseches Zvachim. Talking about where can I slaughter them. We had, for example, a circumstance where the people were surrounding the Beis HaMikdash. They're shooting arrows at the Beis HaMikdash, so they are looking for cover, and they want to bring a korban, so they go into the Beis HaMikdash to shecht it. Okay, if that is kosher. Why? Dichsiv, the pasuk says, Ushchato Pesach Ol HaMoed. You shall shecht the korban shlomim. Where? At the opening of the Ol Moed, which means anywhere in the Beis HaMikdash, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, which is opposite one of the openings of the Beis HaMikdash. And we had discussed there, if you recall, back in Maseches Zvachim, that there were openings in all directions. We had openings in the back of the Beis HaMikdash, openings in the corners of the Beis HaMikdash. We had all kinds of openings. So shelo yehei tafel chamor min ha'ikar. Why? To tell me that Rabbi Yochanan learns that the pasuk says that I can slaughter the shlomim anywhere in the heichal. Why? And therefore, as a result, I can slaughter it in the Beis HaMikdash as well. Because why can I slaughter it anywhere in the Azara? Because it opens into the heichal, which means that the heichal is the more strict place, the more intense place. So therefore, it makes no sense that I'd be able to slaughter it in the Azara, in the courtyard, but not in the Beis HaMikdash. However, you can see that Rabbi Yochanan is learning that since you can slaughter it in the courtyard, for sure you can slaughter it in the heichal. So he's learning from one circumstance to the next. Therefore, you see that he should be able to learn from one korban mincha to another type of korban mincha. So the answer is, okay, so Rabbi Yochanan would agree. You can't sanctify a mincha part way. Here's why, if I take scoopful number one and I put it in, it is sanctified, even though I haven't done all of it yet, is because dato lahosif shani. If the kohen or the person is planning to add more, that's different, right? It's one thing where I say, here's my half of my sacrifice. That's all I'm bringing right now. That's not sanctified. But if I'm bringing a cup and then I keep adding, I'm planning to add, I'm going to get more. I'm going to add more. I'm going to add more. As I'm putting each one in, it's sanctified because I'm planning on continuing to add. That's why it's okay. That's why it's sanctified. It's sanctified as long as my intention is to keep adding. Ditanya, as we learned in a brisa, Mileim, the pasuk says in Bamidbar, which is talking about a mincha that the Nesiim brought on the day of the inauguration of the Beis HaMikdash. It says their korban was, they're bringing silver bowls and utensils. It says that they had these bowls, Mileim soles bula b'shemen. They were filled with fine flour mixed with oil. Vein maleim el shleimim. When you say they're filled, it means filled to capacity. They were not halfway. Now, so that means that
when you fill up to capacity,
yes,
you're afraid as you're carrying it, some of it might spill.
You might be, so carry it carefully. I always, when I almost spilled the soup last week because I filled up too much. You got to make sure you're put carefully. Yeah, walk carefully. That's the answer. Be careful. Right? You are fair point, but yes, you can do it if you are careful. Okay, fine. The Amar Rabbi Yossi's a Messiah. When is it? Rabbi Yossi says, well, I'll tell you. When is it that a utensil doesn't sanctify half? Bisman she'ein daso lahosif. That's if you don't have in mind to add anything else. Aval bisman she'dato lahosif, like we just suggested that Rabbi Yochanan holds. If you plan to add more, rishon kodesh, as you put everything in, it becomes sanctified immediately. Despite the fact that you haven't filled it up yet, really filling it up is what sanctifies it. But since I'm planning on filling it up, as I put some in, each part is sanctified. Now, Rav disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan on that point. Rav, who holds that half a shear, half of the amount, isn't sanctified, b'chavitin keman svirole. So then, who does he hold like when? What's he holding like when it comes to the Kohen Gadol's chavitin? Right? He must be sort of indicating that he learns that you can only sanctify half of the half of it, right? Well, then, Rabbi Elazar, is he holding like Rabbi Elazar, who suggested that, who said that you can bring half of the chavit, you can bring half of the chavitin, so leilif mi chavitin. So then, you should learn. If he's learning that, then he should suggest that it's even sanctified in half a utensil, right? V'chitema rav milsa mi milsa lo yolif. Maybe he doesn't learn one thing from the next. So he's not going to learn from one mincha to the other. So v'hamar Rav, but we learn Rav does not hold that way. Rav says, mincha kedosha below shemen. A mincha, if I bring a mincha offering and I have not put the oil or the levona, the frankincense, into it yet, once I put it in the utensil, it's still holy. Why? Because below shemen, shekem matzina belechem panim. Because the lechem panim, right? It's a mincha, and it becomes sanctified when you put it onto the shulchan, even though there's no oil that goes on the shulchan together with it. Below levona, also it's become sanctified even without putting levona on. Why? Minchas nesachim, right? We also have this minchas nesachim that we discussed, right? If I have my minchas nesachim, the minchas nesachim korban does not have any frankincense as part of it. So therefore, since you have other korbanos which don't have these ingredients, you see that those ingredients are not key to sanctifying other ingredients. So the flour itself can be sanctified without oil because I've got lechem upon him. There's no oil. I can sanctify it without the frankincense because I've got a minchas nesachim which has no levona. Below shemen u below levona. And what if I've got no oil and no frankincense? How do I know that that's even sanctified? Because remember the minchas chote, right? That one's got no oil, not frankincense. That was the sin offering. It's got nothing but flour. So therefore, you see, it can become sanctified. So therefore, Ela Korchach Rav Rabbi Yochanan Sfirle. It must be that Rav, right? Rav holds like Rabbi Yochanan, right? And he holds that there's no mincha, right? That the mincha is not ever sanctified part way. Okay, so therefore, even though Rabbi Yochanan says, once I put a little bit in, it becomes sanctified, Rav just goes one step beyond that. And he says, not only is it that it is not sanctified until you have the entire utensil, even if you sanctify a little bit at a time with the intent to continue, still not sanctified until you put all of it in. Okay, that is Rav's Shita. Gufa. Now let's go back over something else we had discussed previously. And that is, can I sanctify the flour without any oil or frankincense, which we just mentioned, right? You can do that. Amar Rav. Rav says, mincha kedosha below shemen. You can sanctify a korban mincha without putting oil into the container. Shekem matzina belechem hapanim, because that is the way it works by the lechem hapanim, right? It's considered a korban mincha. It has frankincense, has no oil. Right? There's no oil involved in there. And then we have below levona, I can sanctify it without frankincense because she came out to minchas nesachim. Right? This minchas nesachim, right? It does not have any frankincense that comes along with it. It's just oil and flour. doesn't have anything else with it. So, and below shemen below levona, I can sanctify the flour by itself without oil or frankincense because that we found by the sin offering. That also can be done. So now levona, v'shemen levona, kodshi, high below high, v'high below high. Now we can also learn that the levona, the frankincense, this is the step we didn't take before, now we're going to go one step further, the frankincense by itself or the oil by itself can also become sanctified independently. How come? Because shemen, oil, we find brought as a korban by itself, where? The person who has tzaras has to bring a log of oil as part of his sacrifice, not mixed with anything, just a container of oil. And that oil gets applied to his ear, thumb, and toe, and then it gets sprinkled towards the heichal first. It gets sprinkled in the heichal first. Then it gets applied to his ear, thumb, and toe, and it is not mixed with anything. Therefore, you see that just pouring oil into the container will sanctify it. And levona, where do I have frankincense by itself? Shekin matzinu bilevona haba'a bibazichin. That is the levona that gets put into these spoons by the lechem apanim. There's nothing else in that spoon other than frankincense. So therefore, that is, since by itself, so it can become sanctified by itself. So each of the ingredients, once you place them into a utensil, become sanctified individually, right? When it comes to animals, right, we didn't sanctify them by putting them into utensils, obviously. We sanctified them by declaring them, purchasing them in the name of a korban, right? I can dedicate an animal. I can say, this animal is going to be my korbanola, right? You don't see that by flour. The sanctification comes when I put it into the utensil. Right, so that's an important, interesting distinction between that. Also, I can sanctify my animal when I actually do the avoda on it. Right, if I do shchita on it, l'shem korban, it becomes a korban. For Reb Chanina, Reb Chanina says, Chesam base, lozu kedusha belozu, velozu kedusha belozu. Not true. Right, the minchos that require oil and frankincense, they can't become sanctified without oil, without frankincense. Right, you have to have all the ingredients that are in there. Now, Rabbi Chanina. Now the question is, what's Rabbi Chanina's idea? Because Isaron, right? What was Lama Nimshach? What is the purpose of this utensil, this Isaron utensil? Okay, because if you take a look at the different sacrifices and the different types of amounts that you're going to bring, you never bring less than one Isaron of flour. Okay, so now, if I can't sanctify the flour unless I have enough, unless I put not only the flour in there, but also the oil that goes with it and the frankincense that goes with it, well, if this bowl holds exactly 1 Isaron of flour, that means I don't have enough space to put the oil and the frankincense in it. So therefore, and you can't sanctify that flour unless I have all the ingredients put in it, well, then this is a wasted utensil. Why do I need this utensil? This utensil doesn't help me with anything because it can't sanctify the flour. It's just a measuring utensil. Yeah. Is that all it is? Measuring utensils don't create sanctity by themselves, right? So therefore, what's the purpose of this 1 Isaron utensil? According to the opinion, it says 1 Isaron utensil, so it can sanctify the flour. So when I put the flour in the 1 Isaron utensil, it becomes sanctified even before I mix it. I'm going to mix it in a larger bowl, but I can put the flour in here and sanctify it. But if you can't sanctify it in this bowl, what's the point of the bowl? So, he says, minchas chote, because we've got one offering that there are no other ingredients other than the flour, right? The minchas chote, that was it. So if you put flour of the minchas chote into that container, that's the ingredient, that's it, that's what it's for. So that's what that utensil is for. Log lama nimshach. Why do I need a container that holds a log of oil? At the end of the day, I've got to mix all the rest of the ingredients. The answer is log shomatzor, because there's an offering that has nothing more than the log of oil. Vav Shmuel savar la leha de Rav, and Shmuel is going to agree to Rav's opinion that the stolas that the fine flour is kodesh into a utensil even without the oil. Right, as we had said first. Rabbi Chanina disagrees, but Rav holds that way. Ditnan, as we learn in Mishnah. Klei halach, mekachnes lach. We've had this before. We had this in Maseches Vachim, Daf Peiches. Right, so we've seen this Gemara before. So a lot of the Gemaras we've seen, we're going to repeat and say. So it's worth to note. We've seen this before. So if it sounds familiar, it should. If I've got a utensil that is supposed to be a measure for liquid utensils, mekachnes halach, it can only sanctify liquid items for a korban. We didn't know what we were talking about when we said it last time, but now we sort of understand, right? Umidas hayavesh, mekadshis hayavesh. The containers that are supposed to be for the dry measures, so then they can sanctify the dry ingredients of a korban. Klei alach mekadshis hayavesh. Ve'ein kli halach mekadshin hayavish v'lo midos hayavish mekadshin es halach, but not vice versa. You can't flip it so that the dry measure utensils are sanctifying the liquid, and the liquid measures are sanctifying the dry. Ve'amar Shmuel says lo shanu ela bemidos aval mizrakos mekadshos es hayavish. That's true when you're talking about the measurements. However, the bowls, they had these big bowls, and they are supposed to be for catching large amounts of liquid. They can still sanctify the dry measures. Why? Because they're not for measuring. They're really for being a mixing bowl or a container of such. So therefore, whatever gets put in it, it can sanctify. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, that the Nesiim on that day, they brought these utensils. They brought karas, kesvachas, they brought mizrak echad, shnei maleim soles. They brought this flour, belula bashem, and mixed with oil lemincha. So you see that the soles, which was a dry ingredient, is placed into this basin. Nevertheless, it's sanctified in such a basin, despite the fact that its primary purpose of that basin is liquid. Okay. Amalei Rav Acha from Difti Ravina. So Rav Acha from Difti says to Ravina, Mincha lachahi. What are we talking about? Look at the pasuk. It was flour mixed with oil. Flour mixed with oil is basically dough. That's a liquid, isn't it? So Amar Leis, we said to him, Lo nitzracha ela liyave shaba. The answer is yes and no.
Depending on how you make the dough, because some dough can be very liquid, some dough can be very thick.
That's right. And also, if you make dough with a little bit of oil in it, you start to mix it, you still get some chunks of dry flour in the middle of it. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. So therefore, if you've got chunks of dry flour, that's sanctified anyway, even though it's dry. So therefore, it sanctifies that. Okay? V'bois emo, or else, if you want, I can answer. Mincha, bless you. Mincha legabe dam ki yavesh damya. The answer is that what were these bowls originally for? They're for catching the blood of a korban, right? You slaughter the animal, blood came out, and you caught it into those utensils. That's very liquidy compared to dough. Dough is dry compared to that. So then when we say it's a dry item, right, it's dry. That's what we mean it's a dry item. Okay. Gufa, let's go back over something else we touched upon. This is like the wrap-up Gemara. We go back on all the little issues that we had mentioned, and now we're going to back. We had said, Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Mincha shekamatza behecha keshera. If I do kmitza in the Beis HaMikdash, we had said this on Amud Aleph on last page. If I do my kmitza in the Beis HaMikdash, then the kmitza is kosher. Why? Shekem matzinu b'siluk bazichin. Because we find that you can do kmitza in the Beis HaMikdash from the fact that the lechem apanim, you took the spoons off of the shulchan. And where was the shulchan? In the Beis HaMikdash. Taking the spoons off of the table is the kmitza of the lechem apanim offering. Therefore,
Wouldn't it be a sin?
No, you have to do it every Friday, right? You got to do a flip. You got to change over and take the old stuff out, put the new stuff in.
Look at Shabbos.
Yeah, and that was the korban, right? So that's the korban. So Meir Yosef asks. Second, it says v'kamat misham. The Brisa says that the pasuk talks about that the Bnei Aaron brought the offering, and it says v'kamat misham. They shall take from there. They do the kmitza from there. Now, what does that mean? What is the kmitza from there? So we said, mimakom shiragli hazar omdos, from the place where the non-kohanim could stand. And we've got all of our equipment right here.
It's good you brought the book tonight.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Right, we've got all of our.
Huh?
Good thinking.
Right.
Sometimes.
Let's see if we can get a good picture of the Beis HaMikdash here. That's too close. That's too far. Okay, this is a decent picture. Okay, this is an overhead view. They print this in a lot of Mishnayos, this picture. Okay, so inside this is the Azara, right? This whole area is the Azara. This is the Beis HaMikdash. There's a line right here. That line represents 3 steps. So the people who are non-Kohanim came to this little section right over here, and they didn't go past those steps. That was where the Kohanim would go in. This is the area the Kohanim would go in. This is the Ezras Yisrael. This is where the Bnei Yisrael would stand with their korbanos. So it says the Kohanim would go over to there. So says this Brisa, Mimakom Shirak Le'azar Omdos, where the people, the Zarim, the non-Kohen stood, the Kohanim would walk over there and they would do the Kmitza. Okay, so that was from where they were supposed to be. Which means the location of where you do the kmitza is in the Azara, not in the Beis Hamikdash. Ben Beseiro, Rabbi Beseiro says, Minayin shim kamatz bismol sheyachzir. He says, where do I know that if I do kmitza with my left hand, that I can put it back v'yikmotz biyad yamin, and I can do kmitza again with my right hand, as we had discussed a couple of days ago. Talmud Lomar, it says, v'kamatz misham, you should do kmitza from there. Mimokum shekamatz kfar, you could do kmitza from over there, the place where you had done kmitza already before. And so therefore he uses the same pasuk for a different purpose. One says kmitza misham means that you can only do it in the courtyard. The other says the kmitza from there means that I can repeat the kmitza if I missed it. Now, the question is, right, so this is the question on Rabbi Elazar. So according to the Tana Kama, right, you can't do kmitza in the Beis Hamikdash. So, Ika de'amri hu mosiv lav hu mafarikla. Some people say that what happened was he asked the question and he answered the question from the Brisa. Some say, Amar le Rabbi Yaakov, the Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, that is Rabbi Yaakov who said to Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, Asbara lach, I will explain it to you. Lo nitzracha ella lahachshir's kol hazara kula. The reason why it says that you should do it from there doesn't mean that you can only do the kmitza from there. It means that you can do it everywhere, even there, anywhere in the Azara. Shelo tomar, because what would you have thought? You might have thought to say that hoil ve'ola kodshei kodshim, since an ola is the holy of holy type sacrifices, and mincha kodshei kodshim, and mincha also has that same status as kodshei kodshim. Ma ola te'unat tzafon. So just like an ola requires that it shall be slaughtered in the north, af mincha te'unat tzafon, you might think a mincha needs to do so as well. So therefore, the pasuk has to say, no, you can do it anywhere in the Azara. Yeah, but ma'ala ola shekin kolil. Why would I think that? An ola is different than a mincha. An ola is completely burnt. A mincha is not. So the answer is, well, mechatos, the chatos. Then you learn it from the animal chatos. That's not completely burnt. Some of it's eaten. So yeah, but ma'ala chatos shekin mechaper sachave krisos. Chatos, an animal chatos is much more severe also because it comes as an atonement. Yeah, but me'alsham, what about the alsham? Korban alsham is also a shechted in the north. Yeah, but la'asham shekain meaning damim. The asham, we said, has a stringency because it has a minimum value, right? Remember, we had learned that. It had a minimum value. That's not true by a korban mincha. So the answer is mikuluhu, meaning damim here means that it's an animal sacrifice. That's what meaning damim is. Sorry, that it's a minimum, that was the other thing that we'd said about a korban asham. But here, we're saying it's an animal sacrifice. Animal sacrifices are always more significant than a flower sacrifice. How do we know? Because the korban yored, if you have money, it's better to bring an animal sacrifice, not a flower sacrifice. So the answer is, okay, well, mikulu hunami, now that I point that out, you also couldn't learn from an ola or a chatas. It's the same answer. Shekin meaning dam, those are also animal sacrifices. So therefore, no, we couldn't learn from those either. So therefore, right, you wouldn't be able, you wouldn't consider, therefore, that a korban mincha would require northern kmitza, because it's not as significant as the animal sacrifices, which means, why do I need a pasuk to tell me that I can do it anywhere in the Azara? Of course I can do it anywhere. It's not as significant as an animal sacrifice. Ella, so rather, itzrich, I need the pasuk. Why? Because I've thought, since the pasuk says, V'hikriva ela kohen v'gishal mizbeach, since the pasuk says that he's supposed to bring his korban to the kohen, and the kohen's supposed to bring it to the mizbeach, v'kamatz, and then he's supposed to do his kmitza, mahagasha b'keren dromis maravis, I might have said there's a hekesh between the two. Just like bringing it close to the Mizbeach, we said has to be done on the southwest corner, right? That's the famous southwest corner that has the holes in the base where we poured the blood of the chatos, that southwest corner. Af kmitza nami b'keren dromis maravis. I might have thought I've got to do kmitza there because I got to bring it close to the Mizbeach. I'll do the kmitza right there. So kamashmal, and therefore the pasuk says v'kamatz misham. You could do it there anywhere. Okay, so therefore, the pasuk is telling me that I could do the kmitza anywhere in the Azara. And Rabbi Elazar is coming to tell me an extra shita, an extra thing to tell me, even in the Beis Hamikdash itself, it would be kosher. Okay, Gufa. Let's go back over something else that we mentioned in passing. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Shlomim sheshachtim behechal. We mentioned that a shlomim that's shechted in the Beis Hamikdash, ksherin is kosher, shenamar, as Pasuk says, ushchato pesach oel moed. You shall slaughter it by the opening of the oel moed. Why? Shali tafach chomer min ha'ikar. Because the Azara, which is the secondary level of Kedusha, if you can slaughter Shlomim there, for sure you should be able to slaughter it in the Beis HaMikdash. Yeah, but Meisvei, so let's ask a question on that. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira says, Minayin shemi kifu ovdei kochav mes hazar. How do I know that if we're under siege, and there are non-Jews everywhere, shakonim nichnasim lehechal ve'ochlin bekodshei kodshim musharim menachos, how do I know the Kohanim can go into the Beis HaMikdash in order to eat the korbanos and in order to consume the mincha offerings? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Testament Aleph, Bakodesh HaKadoshim Tochlenu, you shall eat it in the Holy of Holies. So the pasuk specifically tells me I can. V'hal lama likra. If your logic is correct, why do we need a pasuk for that? Lema, why don't I say b'chatzor moed yochluha? The pasuk already tells me that I'm supposed to consume these korbanos in the azar, in the courtyard. So v'lo yehei tafel chamer nikar. If you're going to tell me that the Beis Hamikdash is more strict than that, is more holy than that, for sure I should be able to eat it in the Beis Hamikdash. And then if that's the case, I don't need a pasuk for that. So the answer is no, it's different, because avoda de adam oved b'makom rabo. We had this Gemara also in Maseches Zvachim as well, right? We said no, a service is different. The adam oved b'makom rabo. You're doing the service. That's what a person would do in front of his master. I'm working for you. I would do it in front of you. I do it by myself in my office. You're not upset that I'm working for you. That's great, right? So I'm reading on Shali Tafel Chamer Maker. When you're doing the service of the Shlomim, doesn't matter where you do it. You're doing the service for Hashem. Hashem loves it when you do it close to Him. Hashem loves it when you do it further from Him. However, achila, eating, that's not the service part. That's you. You're enjoying the eating. So she'ino the mocha b'mkom rabba, you wouldn't eat in front of your, right? You don't take your lunch break in front of your boss, go into your boss's office and say, hi, I'd like to take my lunch break right here. That's right. That's not what you do. So therefore, time of the cause of crow. I need a pasuk specifically tell me, hello cause of crow. The pasuk didn't tell me, lo yitav chamin reker lo amrina. We didn't say that the Beis Hamikdash is for sure the place that you can eat. Beis Hamikdash is for sure the place you can do the avoda. But the place that you can eat, not necessarily so. Itmar, another thing that was said in the Beis Medrash on the topic. Okay, Belola chutz lechomas azara. I'm supposed to, as part of the service, as we had seen in the pictures, mix the flour together with the oil. What if I mix the flour together with the oil before I bring the korban to the Beis Hamikdash?
I would say it's invalid.
Well, Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Yehuda, and he says that it is pasul, but Reish Lakish Amar Kshira, Reish Lakish says it's fine. Reish Lakish Amar Kshira, Reish Lakish says it's fine, dichsiv, because the pasuk says, v'yatzak aleh Hashem and v'nasan levona. First the pasuk says, you shall pour oil on it, and then you're going to put the frankincense on it, v'hadar, and then afterwards it says, v'eviel b'nei Aaron HaKohen b'kamatz. You bring it to Aaron and the Kohanim, and you do the kmitza. So it seems clear, you don't have to bring it to Aaron until after it's already been mixed. So mitzvahs kahuna. So from the kmitza on, that's when the Kohanim get involved. Limaid al yitzika ubeliva shikshir bazar, which means you don't need Kohanim in order to mix it and to pour the oil. That can be done without Kohanim. Kahuna lo boy, panim nami lo boy. Since I don't need Kohanim, what do I need to be in the Beis Hamikdash for? For Rabbi Yochanan Amar Psul, Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's pasul. Why? Kevan dasi yasa bekli hu nehide kahuna lo boy panim mihas boy. How do you mix it? Where are you supposed to mix it? You're supposed to mix it in one of the special utensils of the Beis Hamikdash. If you need to mix it in one of the special utensils of the Beis Hamikdash, then for sure it should be done in the Beis Hamikdash. Even if I don't need a Kohen to do it, it still should be done in the Beis Hamikdash. So that is why Rabbi Yochanan says, Tanya Kavasi Rabbi Yochanan, there is a brisa that holds like Rabbi Yochanan and Yehuda. Belola zar, if a non-Kohen mixes it, kasher, it is kosher, chutz lechomas hazar psul, but if you do it outside of the walls, then it is possible. Okay, Itmar. Another thing that we said in the Beis HaMedrash.
How does Reish Lakish say you should do it?
How does he say you should do it or can do it?
Like, can you?
You could, according to Reish Lakish, he says you could do it.
On service?
I think you would do it in a service. I think you still have to do it in a service, but you could still, outside the Beis Hamikdash, because it doesn't have to be done by Kohanim, so therefore it doesn't have to be done in the Azara also, he seems to imply. I don't think he would say that you're supposed to mix it in a non-service utensil, because it says in the pasuk you should put it in a kli, so therefore you presume that you're talking about that kli. Mincha shechasra kodem kmitza. Okay, mincha, we talked a little bit about this, I can lose part of my korban mincha before kmitza and after kmitza, right? I've got my offering, and I lose. So if I've got a korban mincha and I put it into the utensil, and then shechasar korban kmitza, a part of the kmitza, a part of the bread crumb falls out and gets lost, right? Bird comes and pecks some of it away. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, Yavi mitoch beiso v'yamalena, go bring some more from home and fill it up. Reish Lakish is lo yavi mitoch beisim. You can't fill it up. Well, now it's a deficient korban. You got to burn the whole thing. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mevi mitoch beisim. Rabbi Yochanan says you can bring from home and fill it up. Kemitza kavale, because the kemitza establishes as a korban. It's not a kemitza. You didn't do the kemitza yet, so you're okay. Reish Lakish Amar lo yavi mitoch beiso v'yamalena. Don't bring from home and fill it up because just kli kavale. Because he says once you put it in a utensil, that's what sanctifies it. Ace for Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked Reish Lakish one question. What about chaser halog? Okay, this Mishnah is in Parak Yud Dalet of Negoim. Mishnah Negoim says that let's say the lug of the mitzvah, right? That's what Negoim has to do with tzaras. So now this person who has tzaras, some of the lug of oil gets missing, right? He spills some of it.
Is there any Masechta that explains the Negoim?
Yes, Maseches Negoim. Right? So if you're missing part of the lug of oil, im ad shelo yotzak, if this happens before you pour any of it out, right? He's got to pour it onto the log onto his left hand, and then he's going to dip and then sprinkle with that. Yimalenu, just fill it back up because you haven't done anything yet. So therefore, it got lost before the kmitza. The kmitza is going to be where you pour it out onto your hand. So tiyufta, that is a good question against Reish Lakish, and he is refuted, which is questionable. Tosfos wants to know. Reish Lakish didn't learn Mishnayos. At least he should learn Mishnayos, right? It's Reish Lakish. So Tosfos says, Mishnayos people learn, but Taros are very complicated. Taros and all the Mishnayos and Taros, people were not as expert in potentially, and Reish Lakish may not have known Mishnayos and Taros. Very interesting to note that. Itmar, another conversation. We might close on this one, only because I have to meeting at 9:30, so we have to run. So Itmar, it has been said, Shirayim shechosru bein kemitza lahaktorah. What if I have some of the leftover mincha? I've done the kemitza, and then some of the mincha that's left in the original utensil, now some of that gets missing. Bein kemitza lahaktorah, I lose some of it between the kemitza and the burning of this kemitza. Rabbi Yochanan says, maktir kometz alehen, you can still burn the kemitza on it, and Reish Lakish Amar ein maktir kometz alehen, the offering is now invalid, you can't burn the kemitza. Aliba de Rabbi Eliezer kuliyam lo pliki. According to Rabbi Eliezer, we don't have any argument, right? Because that according to Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't need you to have all of the offering. We had learned in Maseches Bachim. He had held that as long as I have some of it left, it's still okay. Ki pligi aliba de Rabbi Yeshua. The question is according to Rabbi Yeshua, who says that you need all of it left, right? Ditznan, as we learned in a Mishnah, nitmeu shiyareha. Let's say the leftover part of the offering, I've taken the kemitza out, the remnant becomes tameh. Nisrafu shiyareha, or it gets burnt. Of shiyareha, it gets destroyed. Kemidas Rabbi Eliezer. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, so he says you can still throw the blood of a korban even if the meat is gone. I don't need any of the meat in order to throw. So therefore, even if my original offering is gone, I can still finish up and bring the kemitza. Kshera, so there, according to him, it's kosher. Kemidas Rabbi Yeshua, but according to the sheet of Rabbi Yeshua said that I cannot throw the blood of an offering if I lose all of the meat. So it's puzzle. So this is the same thing. I've lost essentially the meat of the mincha. So I can't. So man de puzzle, according to the opinion here, Reish Lakish, who says that this offering is puzzle, he's Rabbi Yeshua. He just holds like Rabbi Yeshua, straight out, right? Rabbi Yeshua, right? Then now this offering is lost, like Rabbi Yeshua. Man de machshir, the one who says it's okay, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Ad kan Rabbi Yeshua hasam ela delo ishtayer. That where Rabbi Yeshua says it's no good is if you have lost everything. Right, you don't have anything left. But if you've got a kazayas left, I feel Rabbi Yeshua would agree that you could still throw the blood if you still have a kazayas of the meat left or kazayas of the fats to burn. The Tanyas were in a brisa. Rabbi Yeshua says clearly, all animal sacrifices in the Torah, if you lose the entire animal, but one kazayas of meat is left, or kazayas chelev, or one kazayas of the fats are left, zorek hasadam, you can continue with the blood service and throw the blood. So if you got some left. We had discussed this when we talked about the skins going to the Kohanim, and we wondered, can I throw the blood in order to permit the skins to the Kohanim if I lose all the meat? Rabbi Yeshua seems to say no. right? I need some of the meat in order to throw the blood. And if I don't throw the blood, the Kohanim can't get the skins. Then we said, kachatzi kazayas basar, kachatzi kazayas chelev. If I have half a kazayas of meat and half a kazayas of chelev, they do not combine together. Eno zorek azadama cannot throw the blood because one of them is being burnt on the mizbeach, one of them is being eaten by people. However, ube'ola, if we're talking about a korban ola, I can take a half a kazayas of meat and half a kazayas of fats and zorek azadam and throw the blood. Why? Since the entire korban is burnt, the meat and the fats get combined together because they're both going to be burnt anyway. But when it comes to a mincha, even if all of it is still around, lo yizrok, you can't throw the blood. Now, what are you talking about? The whole mincha is around. Why can't you? And first of all, there's no blood. What are you talking about? So what's going on here? Mincha, my aviditei. What are we talking about mincha for? Amar of Papa, or of Papa says, the minchas nesachim. We're talking about the minchas nesachim, the korban, the mincha offering that's brought together with an animal. So therefore, if I lose all of the meat of the animal, even if I've got the entire mincha, I still can't throw the blood. I would have thought of said, I would have thought that since this offering, this mincha offering, comes together with the animal, it's like part of the animal. So therefore, if I've got if I've got some of that left over, I can still throw the blood because I've got the mincha left. The answer is no. Kamash Malan, he says no. The fact is, I might have, if I lose all of the meat from the animal and I have the entire mincha still around, I still can't throw the blood of the animal. It's still an animal. Now, Uman de Pasal, Reish Lakish, who says that this is Pasal, Shani Hacha, here it's different because the Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "V'hir makoin mina mincha as azkarasa v'ikter becha." The pasuk says you're supposed to take from it azkara. Right, this is the name of the kmitza, and I'm supposed to bring it onto the mizbeach. So it says ha mincha. You need to take it from the mincha. Ad deisa lekula mincha yaktir. I need the entire mincha present. That's what the pasuk is telling me. If any of the mincha is gone, it's no good. Vidach Rabbi Yochanan will say, mina mincha, you take from the mincha, le mincha shayisa kfar. It has to come from a mincha which was there before. So now we'll ask a question on Reish Lakish when we come back tomorrow. But we'll stop here.
Beautiful.
All right.